Part 3. For questions 36 through 50, listen to what 3 different radio guests have to say about 3 different topics. While you listen, you can take some notes. After each speaker talks, you will be asked 5 questions about what was said. From the 3 answer choices given, you should choose the one which best answers the question according to what you heard. Remember, no problems can be repeated. For problems 36 through 50, mark your answers on the separate answer sheet. Do you have any questions? Now you will hear the first radio guest.
Every year, many of us shudder as schools let out for the summer and the movie industry begins to bombard us endlessly with films which are often disdainfully referred to as summer movies. What are they? They're films which are designed for the younger set, meaning preteens and teens, and which are generally as mindless, juvenile, and substanceless as movies can be. This doesn't mean that they're made on the cheap either, not on your life. Millions of dollars are poured into these paltry productions in the hope that the target audience, those big spending youngsters, will pour more millions of dollars back. And that's usually what happens, unless the movie happens to be so bad that even the target audience spurns it. But let's face it, summer is boring for kids, and with enough cash in their pockets, they're willing to try anything once, even if their friends assure them it's a total waste of time. But what about us grown-ups? Wouldn't we like to spend some time in nicely air-conditioned movie theaters too? The trouble is it worth the $8 or more it costs just to stay cool while suffering the unspeakable banality of most of these movies? Maybe it is. You see, I keep asking myself if summer movies are really a boon or a bane, and I can only conclude that they do serve a purpose or several purposes, even for those who appreciate fine cinema. One of these is that they show us what Hollywood is up to, and, on the most transparent level, how the producers think. One thing they do is look at the most current fads and trends and exploit them in their offerings. This, of course, guarantees that the movies will have a very short shelf life, since we all know how fast youth culture changes. But it also gives us an insight into what's happening with modern youth, even if the information is filtered through the eyes of the Hollywood moguls. Also, talented young actors who may do great things in the future often make their first appearances here, often delivering noteworthy performances despite the abysmal quality of the scripts. And then some of these movies actually do have worthwhile moments. It may happen by accident, but there is some very convincing storytelling, and some real emotions do manage to surface through the debris. So don't dismiss summer movies out of hand. You may be pleasantly surprised, and, even if you aren't, at least you'll have stayed cool for a couple of hours.
Now you will hear questions 36 through 40. 36.
According to the speaker, what are summer movies? What does the speaker suggest about the profitability of summer movies? What does the speaker ask herself? What might adults gain from seeing summer movies? What does the speaker say you might find in some summer movies?
Now you will hear the second radio guest.
If you've never experienced a panic attack, you probably assume it's the kind of thing that happens when you're feeling a bit stressed and start thinking, what am I going to do? How am I going to manage? And so on. That's what I thought myself, until I had my first real bout of panic, and it was then that I realized that thinking has nothing to do with it. The theory is that panic disorders are triggered by a chemical imbalance in the brain. In a situation where a normal person might feel a little bit anxious or stressed, the person with a panic disorder reacts as if they are in serious danger. The brain sends signals to the body that it is in a truly perilous situation, what is generally known as a fight-or-flight situation. And the body reacts by sending out surges of adrenaline. This makes the heart race, the breathing quicken, and the muscles tense up, which is all useful and necessary when you really are in danger. But in a normal situation, a crowded bus, for example, or an important business meeting, the effects can be devastating, especially if you don't know what's going on. In fact, you'll probably think you're dying. And this idea only serves to increase the fear, and so the whole thing escalates. Some people are so scared they even pass out, though in most cases the symptoms go away with only one serious side effect, the fear that it will happen again. The trouble with panic disorders is that once a situation has triggered an attack, similar situations will always remind you of how afraid you were, and so you start to fear the fear itself, and that's likely to bring on further attacks. This vicious cycle is very hard to break out of, and without treatment, most people just get more and more afraid, to the point that they can barely function normally. What can be done about it? Large numbers of people depend on medication, mainly antidepressants, to control the symptoms. But there are also methods of what's known as behavior modification, which can help or even cure sufferers. This involves learning to manage the symptoms of an attack through controlled breathing, refocusing the attention on a book or something else outside yourself, and so on. In other words, learning to ride out an attack until it goes away. It also involves recognizing that there is in fact no real danger, that your body is merely suffering a temporary glitch and will soon return to normal. I'm not saying it's easy, it's not. But if you want to return to a normal life, it's definitely worth all the effort you put into it.
Now you will hear questions 41 through 45. 41.
According to the speaker, what do most people believe about panic attacks?
(42)
What is a fight or flight situation?
(43)
What does the speaker say may happen to some people who experience panic attacks?
(44)
What often happens if sufferers receive no treatment?
(45)
What does behavior modification teach panic sufferers to do?
Now you will hear the third radio guest.
There has been a lot of controversy lately about the use of cell phones in cars, and some areas have even made cell phone use illegal for those who are driving. But what many people tend to forget is that there are plenty of other things drivers do while driving that make them a menace on the roads. Take my friend Maggie, for instance. Every morning, when she gets into her car to go to work, her hair is in curlers and her face is bare of makeup. Half an hour and 15 miles of driving later, her hair is beautifully styled and she is fully made up. She has also finished her second cup of coffee. Terrifying? You bet. Is she the only person out there doing this sort of thing? Absolutely, and very unfortunately not. The reason why what Maggie does is so dangerous is, in a word, distraction. No matter how in control you feel you are, you can never control or predict what other drivers, cyclists, or pedestrians are going to do. And when something unexpected does happen, your reactions have to be lightning fast. The danger signal or stimulus has to trigger an action instantly. Otherwise, it may be too late. When distraction becomes a factor in your driving, reaction times are greatly reduced because your mind is not entirely on the job of driving. And a delay of even a fraction of a second can mean death and destruction instead of a safe arrival at the other end of your journey. Recent studies show that this really is more of a mental than physical issue. It's true that having your hands occupied with a hairbrush, lipstick, or cell phone can impair your ability to respond quickly. But even people who use hands-free phones in their cars are a danger because their main focus is on the conversation rather than their driving. Drivers who are upset, angry, or depressed also pose a risk because their minds are filled with feelings and images which may be more powerful than what is right in front of them, the road, and all its dangers. My advice? When you are driving, be a driver. If you are hungry, stop and eat. If your cell phone rings, pull over, have your conversation, then continue on your journey. If you are upset or angry, do your best to switch off everything in your mind except what concerns the task at hand. Mentally prod yourself into a realization of what you are doing by reminding yourself of the rules of the road while you drive. Check your speed and your distance from the car in front of you. Make an effort to notice pedestrians waiting to cross the street and groups of children walking along the sidewalk. For experienced drivers, driving can too often become an unconscious, automatic activity. To avoid this, remind yourself, out loud if you have to, that the safety of everyone around depends on you, and behave accordingly.
Now you will hear questions 46 through 50. 46.
What does the speaker's friend Maggie do while driving?
47.
Why is it so dangerous to be distracted while driving?
48.
What does the speaker say about hands-free phones?
49.
Why is being depressed dangerous for drivers?
50.
What should you do to prevent distraction while driving?
'That is the end of the listening test.